The Ensigns of Command was the second episode of the soft reboot era of TNG, although the first to be filmed. In your moment of weirdness, a string quartet is forming where we see Chief O'Brien is on hand without explanation to play the cello. This is so in contrast to his seeming characterization that DS9 would later address it when he said his father pushed him to get into music playing the cello, but then he ran off and joined Starfleet instead. Still, these kinds of things are actually good. It's one thing when someone acts out of character, that's bad. But it's another when someone has a quirk or a hobby that doesn't seem like it would fit in with their character, because that provides a creative eccentricity to them. The gruff, hard work and plenty of it everyman who also plays the cello was certainly not intended, but the result speaks to how you can't make assumptions about people. Data swings by to tell Picard and Dr. Crusher that they're wasting their time. He's gonna suck. They make clear that this is not helpful information. Even if he feels he's being honest, he needs to display confidence for both himself and those who count on him. That there's such a thing as being too honest. For example, telling Dr. Crusher that her makeup job is perfect, assuming she plans to play a doll in the Nutcracker suite, would be a little too honest. The piece begins, but alas, Picard gets called away to the bridge. Seems the Sheliac have called up with a complaint. There are humans on the planet Tau Sigma, a world that is by treaty within their territory, and they have intentions to colonize it. Now that should be impossible for humans. There's a plot radiation there that prevents them from surviving. But after the titles, we arrive to discover that the local humans have a plot resistance to plot radiation, so they can be on the planet for the purpose of the plot, while none of the humans on the Enterprise can go down without death by plot radiation. Sounds like a plot to me. What's worse, getting them off the planet is complicated because transporters don't work. A problem because of the stupid treaty. Here's why it's stupid.
The Sheliac consider humans a lower life form. They would have no compunctions about exterminating the intruders.
You have a ginormous treaty, and nowhere in it does it state that you can't commit mass murder? What is the fucking point of it then? What kind of peace is so precious that genocide is an acceptable price tag?
You know that your own people, the colonists, will be utterly exterminated.
No price is too great to pay for peace.
So Data heads down alone to deal with the humans, and the first two that he meets down there are amazed at his ship and his android being. They explain they are the descendants from the colony ship Artemis, and they now number over 15,000 people. Bit of a problem. I mean, I'm not even sure that there's enough room up there on the ship. Plus, it'd take 10 times as long as they have to bring all those people up by way of shuttlecraft. Oh, and plus, there's the fact that the ones that are in charge are the fourth generation to live in this colony. You know, they might just be a bit attached to it.
The hyperonic radiation took the lives of a third of the colonists before they learned they could adapt to it.
But our colony survived and prospered.
Look around. We have brought water to the desert, built a community.
Well, Data says that's a shame, but it's not their planet, and the Sheliac won't let them stay, so they've got to go. We can't take action to oppose the forced relocation of a colony that has spent generations there.
They're being asked to leave their homes because of a political decision that has been taken by a distant government. But to go to them now after 20 years and ask them to leave what is now their home.
I mean, what do you expect us to do? Fight for your right to keep your settlement?
Saddle up. Lock and load.
Now, that is the stuff of madness, sir. Pack your shit up. You're leaving. Well, their leader, Gorshavin, says that they are not going to be evacuating. They have spent 90 years here. They're going to stay. The actor who plays Gorshavin was dubbed, although there are conflicting stories as to the reason. Some say that was because the producers didn't like his voice, and that's why his credit was removed. Others that the actor hated his performance and had them do it. I find the former is more likely. If they won't accommodate Will Wheaton, they sure as hell are not going to accommodate this guy. So we enter the realm of the subplot, the woman intrigued with Data. Ardrian loves machines, so she'll be shadowing him and being a sort of love interest as far as that can go with Data anyway. Especially when we've got Data on a mission. While he's working on getting them to agree they have to go, The Enterprise needs a way to get them the hell out of there.
Gentlemen, we're giving you an assignment. The one thing we don't want to hear is that it's impossible.
You need to help Wesley lose his virginity. They'll be trying to find a way to beam through the plot radiation, but in the meantime, Picard plans to talk with the Sheliac. But this does not go well at all. They don't even want to talk, never mind negotiate, and they hang up in the middle of Picard's sentence.
This is not a law. It is a treaty. It is designed to smooth relations between races, not to act as a straight jacket.
Diplomacy is punching above its weight in this fight. So, down on the planet, Ardrian says that she believes Data is right because he's a machine and therefore he is going to be smarter and more logical.
Not that any computer we have is half as sophisticated as you are.
No, I would say not.
Is that really supposed to be a robot? Because I seriously thought that was some kind of art piece. Speaking of which, how's that transport assignment coming? Looks good. All we need are colonists who don't have any bones, and we should be good to go. Meanwhile, Data tries to once again convince Gorshavin, but he gives an impassioned speech to Data about all they have done and sacrificed for this colony. Lives lost to allow it to thrive, and now they're being told they have to leave it all behind. Data notes that the Sheliac are not above using force to get their way, but Gorshavin lacks the mindset for this. I mean, their weapons are non-lethal, simple hand-to-hand things, because clearly there are no predators to worry about or other settlements to serve as a threat. The worst thing they have to worry about is rioting. Conceiving of someone coming to exterminate them with fancy ship weapons is just, well, inconceivable. So Data checks in, but Riker explains they're lit out of shuck. The Sheliac will not negotiate. Starfleet is 3 weeks away for a proper evacuation. They're going to hope they can intercept the approaching Sheliac colony ship and try to stall for time. But Data has got to get those people ready once the colony ship shows up. It's not going to be beaming, remember. It's going to be getting them on all of their crap onto the shuttles. That's going to be a lousy time for you to wait for your spouse to start packing. Data says this is a problem, though. Few will accept it, and of those, not everyone is receptive to leaving. So Riker tells him to shut up and get it done anyway, because he's not down there to provide insight into these people. Yep, that's too bad. If only there was someone on board this ship who had nothing important to do right now, that understood how beings thought, and was skilled at empathy so could advise Data. Oh well, back to telling Picard that the angry alien is angry. Instead, Ardrian arrives to be encouraging and even kisses Data in the hopes of helping. It doesn't. So she suggests that Data go there and try to persuade people how horrible the idea is by praising it to a fault.
Before, what you're trying to do was called negging. It was called reverse psychology, and incels didn't invent it. Bugs Bunny did.
Meanwhile,
He wants the impossible.
what I was alluding to earlier is that Will Wheaton was told that he could not be in a movie because he needed to film this episode. And he was all set to shoot the film, but an unnamed producer told him, no, this is an absolutely vital part of your relationship with your mother. You can't miss such an important episode. Not at all. And then proceeded to yank all that stuff out of the script with the implication that he did it just to remind Wheaton that they owned him. This, incidentally, was an especially dick move because Wheaton has talked about how manipulative his parents were, crediting it with helping his breakout performance in Stand By Me for playing a young man detached from his parents. So, nicely done, nameless producer asshole, nicely done. Back on the planet.
Leave now.
Do you consider your position so weak that it cannot withstand a debate?
Logic forces the other side to allow you to speak. Well, we have definitely confirmed we're watching science fiction. So Data speaks glowingly about the nobility of throwing away their lives for a chunk of land and will have no legacy to ever remember this sacrifice. Gorshavin responds logically by calling Data a chicken for not wanting to fight, and then tells everyone that he is prepared to take the risk of fighting if it will mean holding on to what they have. Naturally, the crowd gets behind that, but after the commercial break, The two that originally discovered Data are saying they might be persuaded to not die pointlessly on this planet. And also say they're not alone. There could be others that might be persuaded, and so they're going to have a meeting to try to develop a grassroots effort to leave. Well, if so, they're going to need to hurry. Troy's explained to Picard that communication with the Sheliac is a real problem. It brings up an interesting point, considering that the word they cut Picard off during was straitjacket. I mean, just think about that a moment. How would you translate that to another species? Think about all the conceptions that involves. Even showing a picture wouldn't work, as Troy demonstrates by holding up a glass of tea and saying that just speaking the word to describe it could mean any number of things, not necessarily the tea itself. Could mean the glass, or the color, or the state of the matter, or anything. I mean, just imagine if the Sheliac searched Google for what a straitjacket was, and this was the image that came up. They would probably conclude that Picard thinking that the treaty could turn into that was not very likely, although they wouldn't go so far as kink-shaming. Even the Sheliacs draw the line somewhere.
In your talks, you must be extremely accurate. The treaty is 500,000 words.
Although most of it are the terms of service. Using the treaty, Picard is able to demand a meeting to discuss the Tau Sigma situation, and we'll have to hope that it goes better than Data's meeting. And as a result, everyone leaves. Apparently, under debate rules on this planet, if you render the opponent unconscious, that means the same as a win. Frankly, I'm all for that. Nothing would spice up the next presidential race like a candidate suddenly whipping out a blowgun and shooting a little poison dart into their opponent. Well, I hated their stance on immigration, but they were quick with that tree frog venom, so they've got my vote. Picard's meeting isn't going so well either. The Sheliac state that if Picard cannot remove the colonists, then they are in violation.
You need time, Picard of the Enterprise. We will save you time. We will eradicate the human infestation.
Sounds awful lot like the head of my building when I was in college. Well, Picard takes umbrage, thankfully. I did worry he might be prepared to let them die in the name of the treaty, although I'm surprised he doesn't make clear that they won't stand by and do nothing. I mean, I'd certainly like to think that they'd do something if it came down to engaging the Sheliac in a fight and not just be very angry about it. Oh, I am so miffed they're down there killing everyone. As for Data, he plans the direct approach now, using his own circuitry to modify a phaser so that it will work within the plot radiation, and tells Adrian to warn the opposition that he is coming to destroy the aqueduct. The locals put a whole 4 guards in position, so Data stuns them into unconsciousness, and because he used part of his arm's technology to set up that phaser, he's effectively doing this with one hand tied behind his back.
That was the stun setting. This is not.
Did he manage to actually cause a chain reaction in an aqueduct? Or does it have an anti-aqueduct setting for this? Man, we've had this button for years, and I've always wanted to push it. Data then says, hey, if I can do this, just imagine what an army of Sheliac can do. And his point is accepted.
This is just a thing. And things can be replaced. Lives cannot.
And we never had any second thoughts about force resettling a colony or of helping people who would otherwise have died ever again. Meanwhile, the quartet on the bridge are pouring through the treaty and find a section that inspires Picard. Thanks to this now being in high definition, you can see the nonsensical paragraph in detail. It starts with, "We can search and replace." Come to think about it, that's what the Sheliac want to do with the colony on the planet. But Picard's reading is a bit different. It's that he has the right to call for third-party arbitration and the right to choose the neutral third party, and so chooses a species that is currently in hibernation and thus unavailable for quite a while. The Sheliac, being such sticklers for rules, can't dismiss this on the grounds that Picard is being a tool, since, after all, they want to exterminate intelligent beings for the crime of being too slow to get the hell out of their way. So instead, They seem to think Picard's alternative of giving them a few weeks might be acceptable. Although Picard drags his heels on that, finally having a leg up on the tedious bureaucrat, he waits to answer that returning hail like he's a civil servant on their coffee break 2 days away from retirement. So with that, Geordi's project is put on indefinite hold, Data gets a goodbye to wrap up the not really a romance plot, and his violin performance gets commented on. The end. Post-episode follow-up. Annoying character goes to Gorshavin, edging out the Sheliac by his need to see people get shot before he actually listens. All scores are relative to their series, so compared to the rest of TNG, the Ensigns of Command gets a final score of 4 out of 10. It's hampered by very weak guest appearances down on the planet, which exacerbates this episode's problems. It's a thematically interesting idea in that the two main conflicts are mirror images, the coldly logical versus the passionate human. Both of the coldly logical are forced to learn flexibility in order to work with human beings. Picard scores a victory by using inflexibility to show the futility of inflexibility for this crisis, rather than being content to be morally right. The Tau Sigmas, actually I shouldn't call them that, it makes them sound like a sorority. They assume that their moral rightness, in that they're here to defend their homes, is sufficient to win also. When shown that their force cannot overcome a greater one, that's when they learn their lesson. The problem, though, is the weak performance down there is what drags the whole thing down. The far more interesting thing is the stuff related to the Sheliac plot. In fact, it really seems to serve as more of a respite from the banal happenings down below. So yes, end result, slightly below average as far as TNG standards go, which is a pity. The Sheliacs seemed like they had hints of potential there, that they could have been an interesting player in the galactic scene. Neither an enemy nor a friend, just another party that they would have to be wary of.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
It'll take 15 years and a research team of 100.
Mr. LaForge, I believe we will postpone.